I'm Justin Davis, and this is Joe Camp's RC.
You know, I was like flipping through my Facebook the other day and I came across this image and I was like... Furious FPV has an all-in-one F35 flight controller. Well, big whoop, what is that to do with me? Well, I'll tell you what it has to do with you. This little device right here is going to change the way you long range. No soldering. Plug in the wire. Plug in your servos. Plug in your GPS. Plug in your camera. Your VTX. Your motor. Everything on your fixed wing plugs into this. No more of this. No more of this and trying to make this all work together. Now we have something sexy. It plugs in. It's easy. And they have a stealth range, long range VTX to go with it. So let's put these on the bench. Let's check them both out. Nom, 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 nom.
But okay, I'm gonna get serious or Steve over at Furious FPV is gonna kill me. So, I've been flying FPV since 2006. That's right, since 2006. Way back in the early 1.3 days with 7-inch monitors and single rotor helicopters, several hundred feet up in the air, trying to fly by line of sight and by my monitor at the same time with no stabilization on helis. And then fast forward all the way to 2018 and we have something that is completely plug and play with GPS, return to home, all that good stuff. All you do is plug in all the wires and set it up with iNav on your laptop. Go out and do your first flight test and you're gonna be able to fly some long range. This is pretty amazing. Let's go ahead and check it out a little bit closer and a little bit more serious. Now before we get started, I just want to show you a few things that'll get some of the new guys headed in the right direction. And this is definitely not going to be your first setup for an RC aircraft. Now one of the first things you'll need to do is you'll need to extend your range, which is going to be supported by some type of module like this. You can use the TBS Crossfire. It runs on UHF, so it's going to give you a maximum range. Now the next thing you can do is hop on Video Aerial Systems website, check out some of their different antennas for ground station setup. Because if you don't have something like these two, you're not going to make it very far. Your aircraft is going to turn around and come home after it runs out of range. So you're going to extend your range and get more maximum range out of that. You can also get some micro Crossfire receivers, and they're very hard to get right now. They're out of stock in a lot of places. So just wanted to introduce you guys that haven't seen that before. These two companies are leading the pack. Now my wing of choice is going to be the AR.Wing Sonic Model, mainly because it has a huge bay in here and you can get a pretty big battery inside this aircraft. It's also a nice foam that's really dense and solid, and it's pretty much plug and play. Everything is already wired up through here and you're ready to go with an ESC and a motor. Alright guys, there it is finally in the package, the F35 Lightning flight controller from Furious. I'm super excited about this, mainly because everything is plug and play. Like I said, it makes things way easier for building a wing with a flight controller. I've been flying wings for a long time and I've been flying them without flight controllers, and just in the past couple of years we started to add our own Omnibus F4s and with barometer on there and trying to get them wired up correctly to do all the features that iNav has, because iNav is, if you don't know about it, it's kind of like the godchild of Betaflight. So it's a new thing, relatively new, and a lot of people haven't used it yet, but it has a lot of really cool features for your wing with OSD and all that good stuff implemented into it like Betaflight does. So if you're already familiar with Betaflight, you shouldn't have too much problem navigating iNav. Now the street price, the rumor on the street price for this is that the flight controller itself is going to be around the $50 range, and that's pretty good. That's not bad because it's all encased in metal. It has dampening inside here, and you have these plug and play ports for all of your different modules coming off of the flight controller, and you have some servo pins here. Now I see that my version actually has vertical pins, and from what I understand on the Facebook groups, Luan said that he's the designer, by the way. Luan said that they're going to do some side pins on here, so you guys will have much lower profile setup on the one that you get. Now it is rumored to come out in early 2018, probably in the first couple months. Hopefully by March this will be in full production. If this is around $50, I'm sure that the next version of it with GPS and all the Bluetooth modules and stuff like that would probably be maybe around the $100 range. I'm not totally sure, but if it was $100 or less, it would be highly competitive with some of the other more expensive $200, $300 to $400 flight controllers. Now, another nice thing about this setup is that you don't need an external BEC because it's built into it. It has a 5-volt BEC and it has built-in OSD, so no adding extra OSD modules like Minim OSD. So let's go ahead and open this up. And let me take this out and show you guys. Show us the pinout here. Pretty nice diagram, full color. It has our ESC and motor outputs right there. It has 6 rows right there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you should have plenty of room there for adding on extra options. It shows you the dimensions, and it's 41.5 millimeters one way, 41.5 millimeters the opposite way, and 5.3 millimeters high. Now you're looking at the inside of the pamphlet here, and it's pretty nice because they show you 2 exploded schematics that show you where everything goes, where everything needs to be hooked up for your wing. And just above that, on both sides, they have connections for different receivers. Over on the left-hand side, we have SPD15 or the XSR by FrSky. This is inside the ports tab in the iNav. And over on the right-hand side, we have the TBS Crossfire Micro setup. So you can see which ones need to be switched and what needs to be turned on and saved so that you can get your channel maps working inside iNav. Now the back side of the pamphlet is pretty cool. They show you the main features of it. It talks about the aluminum case, the built-in silicone dampening, the vertical USB port, which is great for wing owners because previously I've had to come in from the side. Most flight controllers have it from the side like Eagle Tree and some of the other ones, just kind of difficult to get to. So that's really nice that it is set up for vertical. They built this for wings. This is great. Also, this flight controller is a 10 DOF, by the way, and it does support the iNav firmware. They say on here, obviously, built-in OSD. We have the driver inverter for S-Bus and S-Port connections. We have the camera and VTX built-in peripheral ports there, so it's a peripheral pass-through there. And it has 6 UARTs on here, GPS, VTX, Bluetooth, TBS Micro RX, S-Bus, and S-Port on here. And like I said before, it does have a built-in 5-volt at 3 amp BEC for digital servos, which is super nice. And it has a built-in buzzer port, so you can add a buzzer on there. If your wing goes down, you can make your wing beep so you can walk in and find it. Now it also has a built-in battery monitor and current sensor. Now check this out. Everything is already plugged in and wired up. You don't even have to plug anything in. It looks like there's 1 to 2 plugs hanging out here, but everything else is plugged in. Check that out. That is so cool. That's right out of the bag. And it looks like this might be the 3 wires for the receiver. How awesome is that? Now, is it looking complicated yet? It's not, guys. I'm just going to move these wires out of the way and show you the first 2 input and outputs. We have the main wires going and leading into the flight controller. You have an inside and you have an outside. You can see they're pretty clearly labeled here. In and out. That's pretty nice. Now the inside is going to be where your battery hooks up to, and you can run this from 4 to 6S. So I have a Tattoo R line here. This is a 1300. You could plug this in right here, and once you have your battery plugged in, your outside is over on this side. And the way you want to do this, the best way to do this, is get an ESC, wire up your XT60 to it, and that way you can just plug this in when you're ready to set it up, and voila, there's the ESC, and the motor will solder on right here. Now before you go and plug your battery in, don't do that until you have your other wires all connected to things, because you do have a couple ends hanging out on these wires right here, and you don't want to fry your flight controller. And I think the fact that they already have everything soldered up here and the XT60s on here, this makes things way easier because you just plug in your ESC and your battery, mount this, and set up your modules on your wing, and you're pretty much ready to go. That's what makes this so exciting to a lot of people. Now here's where it gets fun, and you've got a little close-up here of the layout of all the plugs and everything here for your different modules. This is very, very nice, mainly because years past, if you had something go out, you're going to take your soldering iron and go back in and remove wires and put new things on there. Say your GPS went bad and you had to have a new GPS. Maybe you crashed and broke it. Well, you can just unplug this one and plug a new one in. That's pretty nice. Over on the left-hand side, we have signal, positive and negative connections there, and ports 1 or 2 right here are going to be where your ESC signal wire comes in and just plugs right in just like that. And these are also where your servos are going to plug in from your wings. So you're just going to bring in your servo cable there and plug it in on ports 3 through 6. That's pretty nice for setting that up in iNav. And they already have a buzzer wire here ready for your buzzer. You're just going to solder that onto your buzzer. This is where your GPS wire comes off of, and you already have your GPS module. If you get the version that has GPS, this will come inside your package already plugged in. That's kind of sweet. And next over here we have something called M-RX, and that's where your crossfire is going to solder up to. So they already have this here with the connector right here on the end, so that's also super sweet. And over to the left here we have F-RX, and this is where, if you FrSkys have a long-range receiver, this is where this is going to solder to your FrSky RX. And the next port over is BLE, and that is your Bluetooth module for probably making changes on the fly with this flight controller. So I'm going to try to download the app pretty soon for this, if it is available in the App Store, and see if I can make on-the-fly changes. But I'm thinking that that's what this is all about. You guys are going to have a lot of fun working with this flight controller from your phone. And up here we have where the VTX wire is going to go off to your VTX, and if you're going to use the Stealth VTX from Furious FPV, this is just going to plug right into that VTX. No soldering required right there. You already have your cable harness. And over on the left here, last but not least, we have the camera port here. So I have a run cam split over here, and if you guys want to really lighten up the load on your wing, use something like the run cam split. That way you don't have to carry a GoPro on it. So what that's going to do is it's going to take a lot of grams and a lot of weight off of the wing, and you're still going to be able to record 1080p for your flights, which is kind of nice. But this is not going to show the OSD on the recording, so keep that in mind. If you want to record the OSD, you'll have to do that from another external DVR. But looking at it for the first time in person, I think this is very slick, very easy, and I think this is going to help a lot of people out setting up their first sort of wing with flight control modes on it. Having a flight controller on a wing is a lot of fun. You can just set it up in stabilize mode, and you can just cruise and look at all your OSD and your telemetry on the screen, because like Betaflight OSD, it is configurable inside iNav, which is super cool. So you can move things around on the screen, customize what's on the screen, add your pilot call name and all that stuff. So pretty cool inside iNav if you want to get really tricked out for your wing. And you have other flight modes like loiter, return to home on low critical battery, return to home on signal loss, and a few other types of modes in there that's going to automatically work on this flight controller, which is pretty sweet. And the auto launch feature, which is really awesome. You go into auto launch mode and you shake your wing back and forth a couple times, and it realizes that you're ready for the launch, and then the motor will power up, and you can toss your wing and it automatically starts to power up, throttle up, and it flies up itself. It comes to a maintain an altitude, and then you can switch out of the auto launch into stabilize mode. Now, one other thing I want to point out that Furious has done, this is pretty sweet. This receiver wire for your crossfire on this side is actually 16 inches long. This is a really long cable, and that's because you're going to take your receiver and put it as far out on the end of the wing as you can get it, and have your antenna coming off your receiver on one side, and you're going to have your GPS on the opposite side, so you don't get any close-in proximity interference. So normally long-range setups are always set up like that. You don't want to put your receiver inside the bay with all of the ESC and motor noise. You just want to keep all those components outside of the flight controller bay. And the FrSky wire is also 16 inches long, so you have plenty of wire in here to get your receivers out on both sides of the wing. Now the same is true for your VTX. You don't want your VTX and your GPS on the same side, so you want to separate those, and definitely don't put it anywhere near where the motor is going to be, because you're going to get a lot of noise in your video if you do that. So this is the Stealth VTX that they made just recently, and this is the Bluetooth module. This is where the LEDs plug into right here, and you're going to plug in your antenna up here. Now this is going to plug into the very bottom of your VTX. Just simply plugs in just like this, and you're already wired up, and you can run this out on one side of your wing. You can also make changes to your VTX power, switch up your channel or your band through this Bluetooth module with the supported app, which is also kind of sweet, man. And I kind of wonder if they're going to make this all in one in the same app, so we can just flip back and forth between the VTX settings and the flight controller settings. If they decide to do that, that is going to make this pretty extra special. Now the Stealth VTX also has a built-in microphone for you guys that want to record your audio. Now one other cool thing about this VTX connector is that it is an MMCX connector, which means it snaps into place. So it doesn't have any chance of vibrating out while you're flying, which is kind of nice. So you don't have to worry about any solder connections coming off while you're flying. And also the microphone built into this directly sends the audio to your goggles. So if you want to hear your audio inside your goggles, you can turn on the sound and you'll be able to hear your motor noise through your goggles, which is kind of cool. And guys, the LEDs are configurable inside the app or inside iNav. So you can plug in your LEDs here and you can control them through the iNav app, and you can control the VTX LEDs through the app itself. So here's a full exploded view of how everything plugs into your F35 flight controller and how things are going to lay out on your wing. Now this would be the front and this would be the rear. You're going to have your ESC in the back, motor back here, and the XT60 should just plug right into your ESC. If you don't have an XT60 on this side coming from your ESC, go ahead and plug one in, because if you burn out your ESC, all you have to do is just unplug it and put a new one on there. Pretty cool. And also over here on this side between the ESC and the motor, what I would probably do is use some bullet connectors right here. So if you have a motor go out, you just unplug it and plug a new one in. So that would make things plug and play really nicely. Now you have your XT60 coming down this side for the battery for powering the system, your Bluetooth module right here. I have my run cam split right here plugged into the cam port. GPS down here. We have the VTX wire coming around here for the Stealth VTX 700 milliwatt version, and I have my two cables coming out here, for one for Crossfire here and one for FR Sky XSR or long range receivers right there. But I think this is a total game changer for a lot of people that want to put a flight controller on a wing. This makes it really easy and really nice, because years past we've been doing it like this, and this is a Reptile PDB right here, and the servos plug in on this side, but I had to solder up all of this stuff here. I'm just going to bring this in a little bit closer, and this one's not even finished yet, but you can see all of the 90-degree angle pins I had to plug in there and solder up for all my connections, and the power coming to the flight controller. This is an Omnibus F4 with a barometer on board. You can't do these normally without the barometer on there, because it helps with keeping your aircraft level. And I have my XT60s coming off there, kind of a lot like what you see here, the same thing, coming off to my battery here and going to my ESC here. So this is a lot more work to get all of this soldered up and working correctly. This just maybe about 3 hours worth of work on soldering up something like this. Whereas something like this, I can plug this in 10 minutes and have it going. Now most of you guys are probably going to be running something like a 4S 1500 in the wing that you're going to be flying with, and it's going to be a sort of close proximity flying wing. If you don't start out with a long range receiver, you can still go out quite a ways with this and have some fun with it. So don't start out trying to do long range if this is your first go round. Just fly around in the field and practice the modes. You're going to practice your auto takeoff, you're going to practice your return to loiter, your return to home, all those different options inside iNav. Test it out and get it set up well, and learn it first before you start trying to fly out further and further, because you know, if you lose something, then you have to go find it by the last known GPS coordinates. And if you're going to run a TBS Crossfire, don't get the micro version module, get the full-blown TBS Crossfire, because it does have, and it saves on the screen, that last known coordinate right here on display, which is really, really helpful. Then you can enter in that coordinate into your cell phone and go find your wing if you do go down and crash. Now if you're going to run something bigger than a 4S, you're going to go 5 and 6S, then you're generally going to be building something with a little more range and flight time. So what I would suggest is something like a 6-inch prop on this motor setup. It's probably going to be an optimal setup for your wing. Now I'll go ahead and give you guys some idea of what all this weighs. First we'll weigh just the general setup with the run cam split version 2 on there, and we're looking at 160 grams before we add the antenna, the battery, and the prop. So 6-inch prop on there. It's an HQ prop, that's another 3 to 4 grams. We'll put a standard size antenna on there. That brings it up to 175. And if you're going to add something like a 4S 1300, if you're doing a little closer in flying, it brings it up to about 346 grams before you have your aircraft weight. Now this is the weight on the flight controller and the cables here, and I have those 4 screws out the back, and I'll just go ahead and take this off. And if you wanted to lighten it up even more, you could take this aluminum case off the outside and bring it down to about 36 grams. Now, one other really cool thing about this is that some guys on Facebook have been asking if it's going to support a pitot tube, and a pitot tube is actually something that comes off the front of the aircraft and air goes inside it, travels down a tube to a little tiny sensor, and what that sensor does is gives you airspeed. So that's pretty cool. You can show up your airspeed on your OSD, which is ultra awesome. So Furious is promising that that is going to be an option by the time it comes out for the retail version. So here's the flight controller outside of the aluminum case, and like I was saying, you could lighten this up a little bit if you wanted to just soft mount this on some plastic posts. You also have that option. You can do that too. Now, I could take these pins and remove them and put right turn pins on there, 90-degree pins, and have them coming out the side, but I think I'm just going to leave mine the same. Now this is, like I said, this is probably the first version of this, or the second revision, so what you get, the retail version, is probably going to have the pins coming out the side, and the box might be a little bit different than the one you see here, but this is nicely soldered up. You can see these are really shiny here. They used a really nice high-grade solder. You don't want any of this stuff coming off right here. These are some of the most important components. You don't want to lose total power to your wing in mid-air. They also added vibration dampening in between those connections and the flight frame, the flight box frame. That's pretty cool that they did that. So it keeps this nice and vibration free. It helps to keep down some of the vibration. You're going to have a ton of vibration coming off the motor back here, and your flight controller is going to be sitting somewhere in close proximity to your motor and power setup. So it's pretty nice that they thought of that, I think. And the fact that they have all these connectors already soldered up on here. This is really slick compared to trying to do this yourself with an Omnibus F4 with a barometer. You can see also they have these nice rubber grommets on here for dampening the flight controller. And honestly, guys, on a wing, I've never really dampened a flight controller on a wing before, but they gave us that option. That's kind of cool that they did that. So this is an F4 flight controller, and you can see that chip right there. But I think this is going to fly really, really well. So I'm looking forward to doing a full review of how this flies and how some of the switches work and all that good stuff. Maybe we'll do some setup for you guys in the future on the channel. But if you're interested in this, stay tuned, and please do subscribe on the Drone Camps channel, because I'll have a ton more flying wing stuff coming up in 2018 for you guys. Look at the back of that board. That's so slick, super slick. So 2 thumbs up from Drone Camp's channel to Furious FPV for this new F35 flight controller. I think it's a win-win for them and us. I'm super excited about that. This thing is awesome. So check this out in the link below if you want to. Check out Furious FPV, and hop on their website and check out some of the other cool stuff they make. They are giving TBS some serious competition. Alright guys, thanks again for watching and hanging out on the Drone Camps channel. I'm Justin Davis. This has been the F35 flight controller by Furious FPV.